Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the guests in the room. Welcome to colleagues online to this evening's seminar from the Anglo-Turkish Society. We have a most unusual topic this evening, which our friend and colleague Craig has found for us. And we're really very, very pleased to be able to explore the topic tonight with Elif, who explains that she's just finishing her PhD at Cambridge, although this is not directly her PhD research, it's certainly related. And the title of her talk is Princess Nazlı Fazıl, Trans-imperial Networks and the Press. A most intriguing title. So I shall pass over to you, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Anglo-Turkish Society for their kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk to you about Princess Nazlı Fazıl. Today, I will explore how Princess Nazlı used the British press to present herself as a political actor and to negotiate her relationship with Sultan Abdülhamit II. Okay. Princess Nazlı Fazıl was the daughter of Mustafa Fazıl Pasha, the brother of the Egyptian Khedive, and the patron of the constitutionalist Young Ottomans. In 1872, when Princess Nazlı was 16 years old, she married Halil Şerif Pasha, the Ottoman Minister of Foreign Affairs, who died 7 years later. Her marriage gave her access to the diplomatic milieu, bringing her into direct contact with ambassadors, their wives, and leading politicians. In April 1912, 40 years after her marriage, she reflected on her life as a minister's wife, receiving and entertaining the wives of diplomats and distinguished foreigners at their home in Istanbul.
You need to be in the mode for
So, perfect, thank you. The first 3 Mondays, my reception days, I said nothing except yes and no, and the ladies used to ask me for the address of my dressmaker in Paris. When the 4th Monday came, I dressed in a peacock blue dress. Today, I said to myself, no one shall ask me the name of my dressmaker. Today I will speak, and they shall see I am no mannequin. Since then, I have never been shy. As this
So you didn't like blue, is that right?
I guess so. As this talk will show, shy is hardly a word with which to describe Princess Nazlı. After the death of her first husband, she continued to cultivate and expand her diplomatic connections, forging especially strong ties with the British elite, which would later become central to her political strategy. On June 3rd, 1899, the British women's journal, The Gentlewoman, published an interview with Princess Nazlı. At the time, it was rare for an Ottoman woman to be interviewed in the foreign press. While the interview was intended for a British audience, I argue that Princess Nazlı also used it to send a message to the Ottoman Sultan Abdülhamit II, with whom she had a complicated relationship. By 1899, she was already a well-known figure among the British elite society and had a considerable presence in the British press. Various British journals had covered her marriage and during her widowhood frequently reported on her travels and political activities. In both the press and the memoirs of British diplomats, she was described as a westernized Oriental princess. A figure who attracted both fascination but at the same time condescension. For example, the British diplomat Sir Horace Rambold believed that the princess embodied, and I quote, a strange mixture of emancipation and captivity, of civilization and barbarism. This combination of civilization and barbarism perhaps best encapsulates British perceptions of the princess at the time. On the one hand, she could be presented through the familiar trope of the Oriental princess, but on the other, she was repeatedly described as an exception among Ottoman women because of her command of European languages, her adoption of European fashions, and her unconventional public presence. For example, here we have two photographs of Princess Nazlı wearing the same riding outfit at the age of 16. So one comes from the private archives of Rukiye Kuneray, while the other is preserved in the Pembroke College archives in Cambridge. The Cambridge photograph also includes a note stating that the image was sent to Lord Henry Percy at his request, together with the Princess Nazlı's own stamp, which you can see here. Not only was her adoption of this type of European riding dress considered unusual, but so too was the circulation of her photograph among members of the British elite. In fact, he was not the only one to have this photograph. In some memoirs, for example, Sir Horace Rambold's memoirs, it's mentioned that he also had this photograph with him. So her public appearances could also attract considerable attention. In June 1874, Princess Nazlı attended a luncheon with her husband, Halil Şerif Pasha, hosted by the British ambassador Sir Henry Elliot at the British Embassy in Istanbul. And the event was discussed in the contemporary press because she appeared publicly in mixed company alongside men, something regarded at the time as highly unconventional. An article published in the Levant Herald described the embassy table as the first which has had the presence of a Turkish lady in company with the opposite sex. Her network included many prominent British political figures of the time. She was especially close to Ambassador Sir Henry Layard, whom she regarded as a father figure. When Sir Henry was leaving his post as ambassador, Princess Nazlı wrote to him saying, "Be sure, dear Sir Henry, that I shall always remember you with affection and gratitude, and shall receive any friends of you with the greatest interest and pleasure. Indeed, you have been of immense service to me, and I shall never forget your kindness." There was, however, a sense of practicality beneath her fatherly relationship with Layard. In 1878, Layard had helped the princess secure financial support from her cousin, Khedive Tevfik, by sending letters to the British Consul General in Cairo. In fact, Princess Nazlı is also mentioned a lot in the memoirs of the diaries of Lady Layard as well. While engaging with this British elite milieu, the princess carefully crafted an image of herself as an ardent Anglophile, and this was certainly how she was perceived by many. Sir Ronald Storrs described her as strongly, sometimes embarrassingly pro-British, while Countess Margot Asquith, the wife of the British Prime Minister Herbert Asquith, wrote that she raved about the greatness of England and all that we had done for Egypt. Within Ottoman society and Muslim intellectual circles, her British affiliation was sometimes viewed as near assimilation. Politician and Islamic ideologist Cemalettin Al-Afghani, upon meeting her in 1893, said that the princess was attached to the English more than the English themselves. So therefore, when the princess welcomed the gentlewoman journalist to her home in Cairo in 1899, she was already well known as an Anglophile. And instead of challenging this view, Princess Nazlı seems to have carefully crafted her Oriental gentlewoman image and to have used the curiosity that she attracted to her own advantage in order to position herself favorably within elite British social circles. In the interview, she presented herself as a conduit between the two cultures, as a unique Ottoman woman who, unlike the majority of her compatriots, not only fitted into British elite society, but also offered insight into the life in the Orient for a curious British audience. In the interview, she was keen to highlight her distinction and difference from other women in Ottoman society, her autonomy and independence that was the result of her own refusal to accept traditional demands. To illustrate this, she referenced a popular Victorian novel read by many women in the era, British novelist Ouida's Idalia. Ouida was actually called Marie-Louise Ramée. This novel is largely forgotten right now, but she was a very well-known figure in that time, and the novel was very famous. So the audience that she gave this interview to was very well aware of who this was. Princess Nazlı said that the novel immensely influenced her as a teenager. The novel tells the story of Idalia, or Countess Vassalis, an aristocratic and politically influential woman from the Danubian principalities. In the book, she resides in a yalı on the Bosphorus, much like the princess herself during her youth. Independent, multilingual, and socially unconventional, Idalia occupies a unique position within the novel, moving confidently within elite male political circles. The princess clearly identified strongly with this character. Reflecting on the impact the novel had upon her, she explained, "I admired the heroine and wished to be like her. And then I looked around on my life and contrasted it with hers. Idalia's life was open, unconstrained. She was free to go and come, see and do what she would. I pondered, and the ultimate outcome of my ponderings was a resolve. I also would be free." By the time Princess Nazlı gave this interview in 1899, she herself had become a remarkably autonomous and cosmopolitan figure, a well-traveled polyglot, deeply involved in elite political and intellectual circles in both Istanbul and Cairo. Building on this image of female emancipation, she went on to stress her freedom of action, unrestricted by male interference. I saw no reason for limiting my inclinations towards greater liberty. Indeed, it would have been useless had Halil Sherif Pasha made any such attempt. For I got my way with my husband, as I have always had it all my life with all the world of my acquaintance. She said she was able to see European and Ottoman men and invite them to her Cairo home, something she continued to do after her husband's death. In fact, she held a very famous literary salon in Cairo, and many of the influential politicians and intellectuals at that time, both British, Egyptian and Ottoman, were frequenting this salon. Inviting men to dinner and to one's home was very unusual for a Muslim Ottoman woman during this period. So in her interview, Princess Nazlı cast herself as an independent woman, able to view the Orient with an Occidental eye and interpret it for Europeans. By discussing slavery, servants, and the harem, she reinforced British stereotypes of life in the Ottoman Empire. For example, Margot Asquith recalled that the princess sharing, and I quote, "appalling stories of Oriental vice and ignorance." Yet the princess sometimes highlighted areas where she believed the Ottomans held an advantage, claiming their women had greater natural intelligence, despite lacking European education. She illustrated this with the example of slaves who, once married, instantly become ladies. Culturally part of the British milieu and at the same time an interpreter of the Orient, Princess Nazlı further emphasized her reputation as an Anglophile. She went as far as offering open support for British occupation in Egypt. In 1892, she wrote to the British politician Sir Charles Dilke that we fully appreciate what has been done so far for us and hope and pray for a lengthened occupation. She also told the French journalist Amédée Bayeux de Gerville that Egyptians were children still, babies in bibs, unable to stand without English intervention. In reply to the gentlewoman interviewer's remark, "I'm sure you wish the British occupation at an end. I should, were I in your place," the princess replied, "I do not. I am too true a patriot for that. The fact is that the people of this country are utterly unable to govern it. The English have done everything for Egypt." These words of support for the British rule in Egypt, coming from a member of the Egyptian ruling family, naturally attracted considerable attention in other British journals, including the Daily News and St. James's Gazette, both of which published Princess Nazlı's statement. St. James's Gazette even used the title, "The English Had Done Everything for Egypt." Such coverage was used by the newspapers to maintain public support for Britain's rule in Egypt. However, Princess Nazlı's expressed views shifted depending on her audience. While she often presented herself as a loyal Anglophile, in 1893, in a conversation with Cemalettin Al-Afghani, she claimed instead that she wanted the British to leave Egypt. The princess told Afghani that she was pro-British due to their civilization. But this did not mean that she supported their occupation. Indeed, she assured him that, as a Muslim, she would never accept the British taking land from Islamic territory. The Egyptians wanted to expel the British through violence and protest. But this, she argued, only served to make the British dig in. Because I desire to protect our people from this rioting and protesting, due to my understanding of the true nature of the matter, they call me English and an infidel. But she wished, she said, with all her heart, for the British to leave Egypt immediately. Not all the British were convinced of the ardor of the princess's support of the British in Egypt either. A poet and writer Wilfred Scaven Blunt indicate a practical motivation behind her excessive Anglophilia and questioned the princess's sincerity in praising Cromer and the British occupation. He said, "A good deal of this I know to be nonsense, but she's a clever woman, and I fancy has done much towards converting traveling Englishmen to a belief in their great and noble work in Egypt." Significantly, Blunt noted that her behavior had resulted in Lord Cromer mediating with her cousin Khedive Tevfik not to cut off her allowance. Indeed, in arranging Lord Cromer's mediation, she even sent a letter to King Edward VII along with her brothers Prince Kamil and Prince Haydar, asking for his help in this matter, which is especially remarkable, and this document comes from the Abbasini papers in Durham University. Princess Nazlı's financial dependence shaped her political actions. She relied on pensions from the Khedive and Sultan Abdülhamid II, which were irregular and required negotiation. In 1886, she wrote to the Grand Vizier complaining her pension had been unpaid for 3 years and explaining as a result of the deaths of Halil Sherif Pasha, she had been forced to take out loans and sell some of the jewelry left to her by her father. Indeed, the debts of Halil Sherif Pasha were very high, and this is kept in the Ottoman archives in Istanbul. And she had to, I think, pay for some of that. Struggling with rent, she requested a house from a pious foundation, but the Sultan deemed her choice too expensive and ordered a more suitable residence to be found. Indeed, the relationship between the princess and Sultan Abdülhamit began tensely, marked by suspicion and surveillance. When she arrived in Istanbul in July 1889 to visit her brother Osman Pasha, the Sultan ordered her to be politely warned to leave, citing concerns over her morals and behavior. 4 years later, in October 1893, the Sultan again questioned her whereabouts, instructing the police to ensure she was sent to Alexandria and never returned, while her pension was to be sent to her Egyptian bank account. Reports indicated that she was using her uncle Halim Pasha's name to promise jobs to Egyptians. Despite her departure, the Sultan suspected she remained in Istanbul, prompting police surveillance, which ultimately confirmed she had gone to Alexandria the week before. The level of the Sultan's suspicion of Princess Nazlı is also evident in a series of diplomatic correspondence from 1896. So according to these reports, she arrived in Budapest on 20th of June, unchaperoned with 2 other Muslim women. One of them was Leyla Hanım, who was the daughter of Halil Sherif Pasha. Learning this, the Ottoman Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tevfik Pasha, ordered the consul to send them home, citing official Ottoman objections to Muslim Ottoman women traveling unaccompanied in Europe. The consul wrote that the women had already left for Germany, and even the German police could not track them. The Sultan's failure to intercept her highlights Princess Nazlı's considerable ability in navigating the Ottoman bureaucratic system and security apparatus to her own advantage. Around the same period, the princess was very vocal about her opposition to the Sultan. In September 1896, she visited the Committee of Young Turks in Paris and took a photograph with Ahmet Rıza, as you can see here, the prominent Young Turk who of course became the president of the Chamber of Deputies after the Young Turk Revolution. On 15 November 1896, she published a letter addressed to Sultan Abdülhamit in Ahmet Rıza's paper Meşveret, in which she declared her support for the Young Turks and strongly criticized the Sultan's actions towards the committee, accusing him of dishonesty. During my visit to Paris, the memory of the beautiful words spoken in the past by His Majesty to the late Halil Sherif Pasha, "I love, I adore the truth," came to my mind. And contrasting the words of the past and the actions of today, I painfully observed how short-lived the love of His Majesty for the good and the truth had been. In November 1896, the Viennese newspaper Neue Freie Presse published a translation of the princess's letter, echoing the disagreement between the princess and the Sultan, and the palace was informed of this publication in a telegram sent by the Ottoman embassy in Vienna. So the Sultan was very much aware of this article. Apart from her public declarations, she also expressed her resentment against the Sultan in private to her friend Wilfrid Blunt on the 22nd of December 1896. After expressing her support for the Young Turks, the princess told Blunt, and I quote, that she considered Abdülhamit very near his end now. Her hostility at the time was so intense that she said she hoped Abdülhamit would be assassinated and not simply deposed, as it would be a good lesson for his successor. So 1896 was definitely a low point in the relationship between the princess and the Sultan. But only 1 year later, in 1897, their relationship changed dramatically. The princess withdrew her support for the Young Turks and began speaking very positively about Abdülhamit. Georges Cogordon, the French consul to Cairo, noticed this shift. On May 16, 1899, he sent a telegram to the French Foreign Minister Théophile d'Alcacer, noting that until 1897, the princess had spoken of the Sultan in the harshest terms. She had even published a letter in 1897, which her father Mustafa Fazıl Pasha wrote in 1866, opposing Sultan Abdulaziz. This was a very famous letter, and she published this in Cairo. So this move should have actually caused quite serious trouble, but instead, she was subsequently invited to Istanbul, welcomed to the palace, showered with gifts, and granted an annual pension. And Ottoman archives confirm this. In December 1898, the Sultan increased her pension from 6,480 kurush to 10,000 kurush. And when the princess married the Tunisian notable Halil Bouhajib in 1900, the pension was briefly stopped, but by 1903 it resumed at the same generous rate. Kogordon remarked that after the Sultan had increased Princess Nazlı's pension and after her return to Egypt, she did not hesitate to adopt a completely new tone when speaking of the Sultan, claiming now that the Sultan's good intentions and elevated qualities had been overlooked. The princess's discourse had now changed both for an Ottoman audience and for a British one. According to a letter sent to the palace in July 1898 by the Ottoman Armenian journalist Dilan Kelekyan, Princess Nazlı expressed her loyalty to the Sultan and her disapproval of the Young Turks, including those in Geneva and Ahmet Riza in Paris. This radical change was reflected in her interview in The Gentlewoman. In her discussion of her breaking away from tradition, she explained to the interviewer, "It was said to me at first, but the Sultan may forbid." To which she replied, "If he does, I shall obey him, for he is my sovereign." I said, "But no word was ever objected by His Majesty, nor was any offered either by Tevfik when I later came to Egypt." Clearly, the idea that the Sultan never objected to her independent behavior was not accurate, as he continually monitored her movements and tried to limit her actions. The princess's obedient discourse thus reflects the new and improved dynamics of the relationship after 1897. It also, I would suggest, illustrates that alongside the British, Abdülhamit II was Princess Nazlı's second audience in this interview. Even though their relationship had improved, both the princess and Abdülhamit were cautious and skeptical of one another. While the Sultan had increased her pension and even awarded her with the Order of Şefkat, he continued to monitor her movements. For example, when she visited France and Germany in 1898, an agent named Munir kept her under careful surveillance. In these circumstances, the interview also served to inform the Sultan of the strength of her powerful British connections and thus of her network of foreign support. In the interview, Princess Nazlı referred to Sir Henry Elliot, Sir Henry Layard, Mr. and Mrs. Goshen, Sir William White, Lord and Lady Dufferin, Lord Salisbury, as being among my English friends. Sir Henry Elliot, Sir Henry Layard, Sir William White, and Lord Dufferin all served as British ambassadors to the Ottoman Empire. Sir William White was also a prominent financier and politician. Lord Salisbury was British Prime Minister at the time of the interview. The image she crafted for herself here was therefore that of a seemingly obedient yet intimidating woman with powerful connections. And Princess Nazlı could be sure that Abdülhamit would be well aware of her interview in The Gentlewoman, for the Sultan closely monitored the foreign press. The Ottoman Foreign Ministry subscribed to or followed many British publications, including St. James's Gazette and the Daily News, both of which cited the princess's interview. The Foreign Ministry also monitored British women's magazines, such as Ladies' Realm and Ladies' Pictorial. After her gentlewoman interview, Princess Nazlı continued her engagement with the British press and politics. So these are very interesting letters from the archives of the Churchill College in Cambridge and coming from the collection of William T. Stead, the famous journalist who also published the Review of Reviews. In February and March 1912, she wrote to editor William T. Stead opposing the Committee of Union and Progress and urging him to do the same. If you are an ally, the friend of the Turks, you must try to get rid of the Committee of Union and Progress, because they will be the ruin of Turkey, she said. Stead, who had a more positive attitude towards the CUP at the time, refused to publish her interview with journalist Felicia Scatcherd in his Review of Reviews. The princess then requested the return of her interview, noting that a friend in Cairo could publish it, and offered an alternative piece omitting the CUP. This, of course, reflects the flexibility in her political views as seen in her conversation with Afghani in 1893 in her gentlewoman interview. Princess Nazlı's interest in politics and appearing in the British press continued until her death in 1913. And interestingly, William T. Stead also died in 1912 in Titanic. I don't know if there's something there. So the gentlewoman interview, highly unusual for being an interview with an Ottoman woman in a British periodical, allowed Princess Nazlı to present herself as an ardent Anglophile, integrated into British elite circles. At the same time, the interview allowed her to address the Ottoman Sultan, with whom she had a complex but dependent relationship. Displaying her array of powerful British elite connections, she sought to signal her level of protection to the Ottoman authorities. Despite her significance, she has received relatively little attention within academic political histories of the Ottoman Empire and Egypt, where she is more often remembered as a salon hostess rather than a political actor in her own right. But of course, there are many great works focusing on her photographs, on her paintings written by art historians, but her political actions are less worked on. The princess's Trans-imperial case was certainly unusual, but her experience may lead us to reconsider the way elite Ottoman women operated in the late 19th century. Before I conclude, I would also like to remember a conversation I had with Rukiye Kuneral during the course of this research in 2022. Rukiye Hanım, the great-granddaughter of Princess Nazlı's brother Osman Pasha, very generously shared with me her recollections of the princess as well as photographs from her personal archive. She told me that Princess Nazlı continued to be remembered within her family as a remarkably unconventional and sophisticated woman many decades later. Since Rukiye Hanım's passing, those conversations have acquired an even greater significance for me, and I would like to remember here with gratitude her generosity and kindness. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. That was a very nice snapshot into this period, beautifully presented.
Thank you.
Just whilst colleagues will take the questions in the room first, but just whilst colleagues are thinking about the questions, can I ask for a tiny factual clarification? I'm not familiar with the Abbas Hilmi collection in Durham. Do you know anything about it?
Yes, so Khedive Abbas Hilmi's papers are there, and all of them are digitized and can be found online. it's an extensive collection. There are so many letters, both about the Kedivil family, women, and there are photographs as well. So
It was left by his grandson, Abbas Hilmi, who now lives in Egypt and Turkey. And it's a complete, it's business, political, personal, architectural view of his activities in Egypt and the Ottoman Empire and in England, because he's in touch with Ernest Cassel, the economic development of Egypt.
yes,
And there's photograph albums which I've seen and reports from Istanbul on Turkish politics. A lot is in French, a lot in Ottoman and Arabic. It's a polyglot archive.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. You don't know how it ended up in Durham, do you?
Abbas put it there because he didn't want it to be in London. The family deposited the papers in Durham. They thought, I don't know why. They just thought it was a good place. It's well worth a visit.
Well, it sounds absolutely marvellous. Well, if it's digitised, the visit will be really rather straightforward. But thank you very much indeed for talking about that.
actually, it was Rukiana who told me about this archive.
Okay.
When I published my article, I didn't know its existence, so I saw that document later on. Yeah, there are also photographs of Princess Nazlı there as well.
Clearly, because you showed some of
Yes.
your first ones from there, for example. Well, very good work. Who would like to ask a question for our speaker?
Why were there not more Nazlı Hanums? Why wasn't her example followed by other elite women?
That's
Because she goes to dinner in the 1870s in public with men, and then
yes,
nothing happens.
yes. In this interview, for example, they also ask her, like, are you not an example to other Ottoman women? Would you not want to be followed by other women? And she says, no, this will come later on, but I don't want to take the responsibility, etc. I think she's quite special in this earlier period because also she uses a lot of her like widowhood status and continues to be in touch with other men. There are other women who were also politically active, but giving an interview was especially quite rare. After the Young Turk Revolution, we have some other interviews with Muslim Ottoman women. For example, Halide, Fatma Aliye, etc. They all gave interviews and in both French and British press, but not before. The gentlewomen also. So the friends that she mentions in this journal, the wives of British ambassadors in Egypt, for example, Lady Grenfell, they also gave interviews to gentlewomen. So it might have been kind of mediated by that as well. And yeah, I think it's a mix of her personality, but also wealth as well.
Did she have independent wealth, independent of her husband?
Yes, she did. She had problems, but still, it must have been quite considerable. For example, when she went to Paris and met Ahmet Reza and the Young Turks, she actually donated lots of money to the committee as well.
Oh.
And she became a member of the committee, which is quite rare as well. It's written in Şükrü Hanioglu's book, and he even gives her number that she gave, that she was given by the committee.
And you speak of her as an Ottoman. Does she ever talk about Egypt and being Egyptian?
Yes, that's quite interesting because in some of the memoirs, if I'm not mistaken, Ron Stores mentions this. So she considers herself both Egyptian and Ottoman, but yeah. He says that she was always speaking in Turkish, and her Arabic apparently was not as good as her Turkish. So within her family, they were speaking in Turkish. He wrote, but I think the way she talks about in those instances where we have like her own voice, when she talks about my homeland, she talks about both Egypt and the Ottoman Empire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, she wasn't wrong. The CUP was a disaster for Turkey.
Yes.
On the other hand, the disaster was presumably coming in one shape or form anyway. It's difficult. It's of course very fascinating to think of alternative histories.
Yes, she said that in 1912 as well. So it's that moment where the CUP becomes even more and more authoritative, and it's just before the coup.
I'm wondering, are there any sources on how her activities were received by the Egyptian or Ottoman establishment?
Yes.
So the Sultan was monitoring her, but besides this, she seems to have been remarkably free to just go around and give interviews and
there are things where there are reports where Khedive Tevfik was also kind of not very pleased with her actions, very contrary to what she said in the interview. For example, apparently in Cairo, with Margot Asquith, she went to a masquerade ball and like wore I can't remember, but ancient Egyptian kind of costume, and she was going to the opera like a European, and that was causing some problems with Khedive Tevfik. But of course, there are also other kind of disputes there, because Tevfik was the son of Ismail, Khedive Ismail, and normally Princess Nazlı's father, Mustafa Fazıl Pasha, should have become the Khedive after him, because it was passing from actually the old eldest family, eldest male, but then Ismail changed it and made it like his son would become. So there was another dispute there, and also, for example, there are other Muslim intellectuals like Muhammad Abduh, who was a frequent visitor in her salon. He says that he should not be involved in politics. These princesses should not be involved. Things like that. Hope that does.
So I wonder whether anybody online would like to ask anything. I think we need to stop sharing, won't we, to see if there's
The system here doesn't allow for people to, but I can see there's 13 people online, and they're all quiet right now.
Well, it's asking if you put their hand up who would like to ask a question.
Anybody online, please free to jump in and ask a question. Oh, Eve Lacey, please, Eve, floor is yours.
Can you hear me? I'm not sure if the microphone's working.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I wondered, you mentioned other interviews that other elite women like Holiday Edip and others had given afterwards, and I wondered if you knew of examples of similar phenomenons where they have a dual audience in those interviews. Are they talking to an Ottoman and English audience or French audience, or anything more interesting that you have about that?
Yes, I think this could be definitely the case with Halide Edip. For example, in 1908, she published a very famous letter addressed to the editor of the British periodical The Nation, where she talked about the revolution and women, and that was definitely both addressed to an Ottoman and British audience. And in fact, for example, the British educationalist Isabel Fry, who was the sister of the famous Bloomsbury Group member Roger Fry, saw this interview, was very touched by it, and then went to Istanbul to visit and inspect women's girls colleges in Istanbul after that. So, and this was also well known in the Ottoman Empire. She even mentions it in other articles that she wrote in Tanin later on. Yeah. Oh, just to also mention, I forgot to mention this. She was not the first Ottoman woman to be interviewed in the Gentlewoman. Before her, the wife of the Ottoman ambassador, a Greek Ottoman woman, was also interviewed in the Gentlewoman. But she was the first, the one that I could find as a Muslim Ottoman woman.
It's very interesting, isn't it? This whole thing is partly tied up with the way the Ottoman Empire gradually became a fully fledged diplomatic and international partner into Western Europe as a whole. So at the same time as we have this emphasis on being the clear of all the Muslims and so on and so on and so on. If you look at the Almanac to go through, you find all the descriptions of the Ottoman court in the protocol, but alongside those of Austria and the Habsburgs and of course the
The
British.
Sultan gives dinner parties
Exactly.
with wine.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Mustafa Fazıl Pasha did as well, and he also welcomed Empress Eugenie, and there's a menu, and Princess Nazlı was in that, and she met the Empress as well. That's the first time that she's mentioned in the European press, as a young girl.
Are you getting a book?
I wrote an article based on this interview that was published in Middle Eastern Studies, and I'm right now working on my thesis, which focuses on Ottoman women in the aftermath of the Young Turk Revolution and their political activities. So hopefully that will be a book.
So does she have contact with Western women in the Middle East as well as Western men?
Yes, absolutely. Most of the wives of the ambassadors, she was in contact with them. Yeah, like Lady Grenfell, and also like she was very close to Enid Layard, wife of yeah. She was, for example, with Lady Layard, she was going to dinners and like inviting themselves to their homes, etc.
Yeah, I was thinking also of independent women travellers. I'm trying to. What periods was stand-up active in?
She's earlier.
She's earlier, is she?
But there were women
Must have been
travelers in Egypt, like Amelia Brassey or,
for example.
who else? Well, Gertrude Bell. Did she ever meet Gertrude Bell? Do you know?
I didn't find any evidence.
Gertrude Bell, I suppose, just overlaps, doesn't she? Yeah.
I guess like.
What was her palace in Cairo? Does it exist? Her palace? No.
I think.
Did she have a palace?
Yes. What her name? Can't remember the name of it right now, but it did exist. Maybe someone would like to.
There's a question online. So, was it Anna Musurus who was interviewed in the British press before Princess Nazlı? This is from Arambar Daroli.
One second, tell you.
It's the wife of the Ottoman
Musurus Pasha.
No, it wasn't Musurus. It was later on. Yeah, Kostaki Antopoulou Pasha's wife. Madame Antopoulou.
There we go. Right.
Did she have children?
She had a baby, but then the baby died, so she didn't. But she raised Halil Sharif Pasha's daughter Leila, who was from a French woman. Yeah, Leila accompanied her throughout the travels, etc.
course, these shifts in negotiations are very interesting, aren't they? I mean, that's the principle thing that you're talking about. I mean, she really needed to be very careful what she said because she didn't have a big family protecting her.
Right.
She was negotiating with these relatives, but they were suspicious of her because she needed so much support
Exactly.
financially.
Yes.
And so she was really dependent on almost singing for her supper if she wanted to
Exactly.
remain in, and she did so rather well right up until.
Definitely. Very, it's such an interesting case in terms of like political agency and like a true political actor in that time as well. It's like comes out of so much, and like I was very surprised to see wherever I went, I would in an archive I would find something that was related to her from which like when I came to Cambridge, I was surprised to, well, maybe I shouldn't be, but in Pembroke College, Churchill College, and see, she's everywhere.
Well, any more questions for our speaker? No, any more questions?
And from our online audience, your last chance, please.
In that case, thank you very much indeed for your
Thank you so much.
introduction. It was interesting, I think, to